Snowden, Ed Snowden, doesn't have quite the same ring as Bond, James Bond, but it does make me wonder how a guy with very few credentials got to snoop on our credentials. So too tonight, Senator Dianne Feinstein saying Congress will consider limiting access to classified info to folks who should be looking at that info. To Cedric Leighton, a former deputy director of training at the National Security Agency, who might offer us some insight as to which guys get this insight and oversight. Colonel, how would you winnow it down? Could you?
Well, basically, Neil, it's one of those situations where you look at the person's background, you see if that background actually fits with the job that they're applying for, and sometimes they don't even know what job they're applying for because it's a classified job. But in terms of getting clearances, you basically look at a person's conduct in the past and you determine whether or not you think they're going to be a risk in the future. And that includes things like financial issues, any bankruptcies, any possible drug use.
He apparently, Colonel, didn't have any of that. Now, he was
That's
high school dropout. Not that that should be bad. A lot of people say, oh, high school dropouts do not play. Obviously, he was a real computer whiz. He was very smart, very adept at math, I understand. So those would be skill sets that I think would be appreciated at the NSA. But having said that, is there another means by which you say, all right, it's possible this guy or this woman could just go batty on us? What do you do as far as psychological or ties that you try to look at or see?
Well, that's actually a great point, because sometimes people pass their initial clearance check with flying colors, but then when they are in the job for several years, things start to happen and they start getting access to information. They start thinking they're James Bond or other people like that. And if they do that, then it's obviously something that's apart from reality, to say the least. So what can happen in a case like that is they look at them every 5 years. There's a 5-year periodic update that's done for security clearances.
Well, I would cheat right there, Colonel. Maybe we should, truncate that down a little bit. 5 years, a lot can happen in 5 years.
Oh, absolutely, and I agree with you. And I think especially in this day and age where you have all kinds of temptations that are out there, and you also have the ability to check on people more quickly. Now, the people at the clearance bureaus are going to tell you, my God, we're inundated with work. We can't keep up with what we're doing right now. But that means that we have to find a better way to really look at how we select people for this. And I would start with how they change in the job, especially young people, because young people are subject to so many different things out there, so many different not only temptations but also different ways of doing things. And in this particular case, it becomes really important to look at how they're interacting with the workforce, how they're going about doing certain things. And one big red flag would be if they're requesting early time off as soon as they get there. He was served in this position apparently about 3 or 4 months, and he already requested a leave of absence. That would be a red flag to me if I were supervising somebody like that.
That's interesting. I always remember a person I interviewed years ago for a job. This is an interview for a job, and the first thing he said in the job interview is, how much vacation time do I get? And I just thought, well, this is not going well for you. But that's among the kind of stuff, not to be silly, you look for an ad that would raise eyebrows, or should, right? And they're not doing enough of that, right?
Right, that's exactly right. And the other thing is unexplained affluence. Aldrich Ames, which was a spy that worked for the CIA, he had a lot of things that a normal CIA employee would not have. A Jaguar, a nice house, a wife that was always dressed to the nines in furs, apparently. Those kinds of indicators are there. Now, some people legitimately inherit money, do things like that, and they can do that, but that's very rare. So you start driving fancy cars, or you start hanging out in fancy places, if you're on a government salary, or even as a contractor working these kinds of issues, you have to think, okay, where are they getting the money from, what are they doing, and what are their motivations?
That's very good practical advice. You got to find an army of people to do just that and to look at that. But Colonel, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Neil. Thanks so much for having me.
Always a pleasure.